Just as he entered the bank with his son, the man encountered an armed robbery. Faced with the threat from the robbers, he showed no signs of panic, but instead calmly called his son to his side. When the robber realized the man was not a threat, he turned the muzzle of his gun towards the child. What he didn't expect was that this action would cost him his life. Seeing his son raise his hands and surrender, the man also removed his hearing aid. In that moment, the world became completely silent, and the demon hidden deep within him was awakened. After the gunfire ceased, he appeared before his son completely unharmed, while all the robbers lay fallen on the floor. The sight left all the bank employees utterly stunned. He picked up his son, glanced at the surveillance camera above, and quickly left the bank. But his recent actions had completely shattered the peaceful life he had maintained for the past 5 years. As soon as the incident occurred, a special agent organization, led by a man named Cinder, received the report. Upon watching the video, he was incredibly excited. For years, he had wondered why his two best subordinates had betrayed him, and now he understood. They did it because they had a child. The story began 8 years ago, when Cinder established a special operations unit to respond to global instability. This unit was codenamed Phantom, in which Isaac and Kira were the two most outstanding members and shared the role of commanders. Although regulations forbade workplace romance, the two secretly had a relationship and even had a child together. Wanting to maintain a peaceful life, they decided to leave the organization and live in anonymity. However, due to a failed mission that injured Isaac's ear, he had to use a hearing aid for the rest of his life. Therefore, Kira became the one responsible for protecting the family. She knew Cinder's personality well. He would not easily give up on hunting them down. Kira had always been silently eliminating those sent by Cinder near her husband and son, nipping any thread in the bud. 5 years passed, and their son had grown. Just when they thought life would be peaceful forever, Isaac's actions in the bank exposed them. Immediately, he took his son and left the city for a secret safe house in Florida. After learning the news, Cinder immediately ordered the video to be sent to all Phantom members, while also placing a $25 million internal bounty for the elimination of Isaac's entire family. Kira also quickly discovered the video circulating on the dark web. Knowing that danger was imminent, she sent a message to her cousin, Marvella, an official in the Department of Justice, explaining the entire situation and pleading for help. Coincidentally, the Department of Justice was also investigating Cinder's illegal activities and needed evidence, so they agreed to help. After discussing with her cousin's husband, Cliff, they both decided to act quickly. Meanwhile, Isaac led his son through the jungle, finally reaching an abandoned World War II-era church deep in the woods north of Miami. Although the ground floor was in ruins, the upper floor was still habitable with full amenities, which was the secret base he had mentioned. After checking that everything was secure, they had dinner together and decided to stay there until things cooled down. But when night came, just as he was drifting off to sleep, Isaac was awakened by a loud noise. He immediately drew a weapon from a drawer, preparing to face the approaching danger. He began to survey the situation in the house, but suddenly he saw a wet footprint on the floor that made him instantly realize someone had broken in. Just as he regained his composure, a voice cut in. "You're putting our son in danger." From the conversation between the two, we learned that the person in black was no stranger, but the child's mother, Kira. The two were determined to settle the score until they suddenly noticed their son standing nearby. Kira slowly approached her son, her fierce demeanor completely vanishing, replaced by a look full of love and sorrow. Although she had left the organization for 5 years, during that time, she had always lived in the shadows, hiding the whereabouts of her husband and son to protect them. When she missed them too much, she only dared to watch them secretly from a distance. And now, with her son standing right in front of her, the emotions in her heart were beyond words. In that moment, the maternal bond was intensely palpable. But at the same time, Cinder, the man who wanted to kill Isaac and Kira, had reassembled all the members of the G7 organization. He even doubled the bounty, determined not to allow any unexpected variables. The two targets had to be completely eliminated. Waiting until their son was fast asleep, Kira told Isaac that she had sent a request for help to her cousin, Marvella. Although Isaac didn't believe the Department of Justice could catch Cinder, he still thought it was a chance worth taking, so he didn't object. Afterwards, they went to the bulletproof car they had prepared. The car was specially reinforced, able to withstand a level 10 impact, and was extremely sturdy. The plan was to always stay on the move to avoid capture and wait for Marvella and her husband to arrive as backup. On the way, Isaac turned on his phone and played some music. They just drove along the mountain roads with no specific destination. Isaac was a nostalgic person. Ever since falling in love with his wife, he had never changed his phone. It was filled with sweet photos of the two of them and precious moments of their son growing up. However, before the song had even finished, Isaac noticed a thick fog ahead, which was not normal. He quickly activated the car's radar and detected someone tailing them from behind. Kira immediately opened the passage to the trunk, placing their son in a special protective device prepared in advance. No matter what happened, this device would keep their son completely safe. Just as she returned to the driver's cabin, Kira saw a truck appear behind them, and at the same time, their car began to be surrounded by unidentified weapons. Missiles rained down, making the situation extremely critical. But Kira was not one to be easily subdued. She quickly grabbed a weapon from behind the seat and prepared to fight. They were not people to be trifled with. Just as she finished assembling the weapon, an armored vehicle from behind charged forward, smashing a bystander's car. Kira put on sunglasses, leaned out of the car, raised her assault rifle, and launched a strong counterattack on the surrounding targets. At this moment, the armored vehicle charged forward again to attack them. With its reinforced shell, it was completely unafraid of the bullets from Kira's gun. However, it was not invincible either. Realizing this, Kira immediately fired a grenade, causing the front of the vehicle to burst into flames, then quickly aimed for the gas tank. A loud explosion rang out. The armored vehicle exploded, losing all combat capability. But even so, the danger was not over. Before long, the G7 organization's mercenary team arrived at the cliff. When they saw the car submerged in the water, they had no idea that the family of three had already escaped safely to the shore. Shortly after, while training, Cinder, the head of G7, received the report. He immediately gave the order. Alive, we must see the person. Dead, we must see the corpse. By any means necessary, retrieve the car. Helicopters and a rescue team were immediately deployed in unison. After escaping, Kira was observing the situation with binoculars when her expression suddenly changed. All of their attackers were G7 soldiers. This meant the upcoming situation would be even more dangerous, because no one could easily join the G7 team unless they were elite. But right now, they had no other choice. After finding a safe place to hide, Isaac questioned how the enemy could have found them. Kira was also extremely confused because only her cousin Marvella and brother-in-law Cliff knew their whereabouts. However, Kira didn't believe her two relatives could betray them, so Isaac had to dismiss the suspicion as well. However, when he woke up, he discovered that Kira was gone. Instantly, he understood her intentions. On Cinder's side, when he learned that no one was in the car, he was furious. He couldn't believe that the elites he trusted couldn't handle two deserters, one of whom was even accompanied by a child. This time, no matter what, he would not allow another failure. He immediately boarded his private jet to personally direct things on the front line. Just then, his phone rang. Cinder was extremely surprised to hear Kira's voice. He signaled his subordinate to trace the call's location. Kira's purpose was clear. She demanded that he let her husband and son go and withdraw the entire G7 team. She promised to meet him soon. Kira warned, 5 years ago, you and I could take on a whole team by ourselves. If you want this war to continue, fine. If not, accept the deal. I will come to you, and we will talk face to face. Otherwise, I will expose all your dirty secrets to the OIG. After reaching an agreement, Kira drove a boat to the isolated island they had agreed upon. It was a small island a few hundred square meters in the middle of the vast sea. Cinder had been waiting there for a long time. Kira didn't stand on ceremony. The two had worked together for many years, and she knew he had always had feelings for her. Therefore, Kira suggested they speak privately. Cinder agreed and let his two subordinates leave. He had no idea that Kira's gentleness at this moment was just a cover for a larger scheme. Just as the two were talking, the atmosphere suddenly changed. A sudden draw of a gun along with a shout of, but just then, Cinder suddenly stood up from behind. The bullet Kira had fired only lodged in the vest on his chest, causing no injury. Kira looked at him in astonishment, not expecting that Cinder had anticipated her trick and had coordinated to complete this act. Unfortunately, Kira had been too careless. If only she had hit him in the head, things might have turned out differently. At the same time, the cousin and her husband also arrived and met Isaac. The group quickly moved to a secret base set up by the cousin in the area. However, just as Isaac was about to lie down and rest, he heard a noise at the door. He went to open it, but to his surprise, the newly arrived group were members of the G7 team. Isaac had no time to react, not even enough strength to fight back. Before long, Isaac was escorted to a small island. Accompanying him were his son Kai and his cousin Marvella. At this point, Cinder came to greet the cousin and her husband, and it was clear that Cliff, the husband, was the traitor who had revealed the group's hiding place. Marvella was furious. After 25 years together, she couldn't believe the one who betrayed her was the very husband she had shared her life with for so long. That Cinder could manipulate Cliff was no doubt because he had offered a price that couldn't be refused. Now that everyone he wanted was here, all he had to do was kill them all, and he could both intimidate the Department of Justice, warning them that he was not to be trifled with, and regain the face he had previously lost. Not only that, Cinder also threatened that after killing Kira and Isaac, he would train Kai to become the new head of the G7 team. With the special bloodline from both of them, plus a few years of careful training, he was sure Kai would become the future pillar of this organization. Just as he was about to make his move, his two subordinates unexpectedly raised their guns, pointing them straight at him. They solemnly declared, "Secretary General Cinder, by order of the Office of the Inspector General, you are under arrest and will be transferred to NSA Naval Base, the camp for special criminals." It turned out, another two-person team had also been silently investigating Cinder, but they hadn't disclosed it to Isaac's group because they didn't trust anyone. What surprised Cinder even more was that his two close bodyguards turned out to be undercover agents from the Department of Justice. They had collected sufficient evidence of his crimes and were prepared to bring him to justice. Witnessing this scene, the remaining people couldn't help but burst into loud laughter. However, the remaining members of the G7 team immediately drew their weapons, preparing for a fight. A fierce gunfight erupted on the island. Cinder ran to the kitchen, pulling out weapons and ammunition hidden under a cabinet to find a chance to break through. But a wounded agent suddenly stood up and fired at them. A G7 member reacted quickly, tackling him. Despite being wounded, the agent tried to defend himself. Isaac and Kira were still fighting the remaining G7 group. Kira spotted a grenade on the ground and, without hesitation, shot to detonate it. Both were thrown back by the shockwave, but the enemy's losses were even more severe, with only 2 survivors. Cinder emerged from the smoke and dust, saw the scene before him, and knew the tables had turned. He was about to slip away when another surviving agent shot him in the shoulder. He immediately went berserk, firing back relentlessly, causing the agent to gradually fall. But just as he was about to deliver the final shot, his gun ran out of ammunition. Seeing the situation was dire, an agent taunted him with a few words, but Cinder wasn't angered. He just coldly turned and left the room. Realizing the situation was unsalvageable, Cliff also tried to escape, but ran into the boy. Kentucky Kai shouted angrily, "You pretended to be my friend. You have guns at your house, but you let those bad people beat my dad." Cliff had a dark idea. He intended to take Kai hostage to escape, but before he could act, Marvella appeared behind him and delivered a fatal blow to his kidney, then tightened her grip around Cliff's neck until he could no longer resist. Cliff's fate was sealed. Now, only a few last ones remained. Isaac detected someone approaching by their shadow on the ground. Another one even brazenly walked straight out in front of him. When the opponent got close enough, Isaac acted quickly, shooting a gas tank to take one down, then shooting the other in the leg. Kira was engaged in hand-to-hand combat with a female agent. Both were elites of the Dark Forces, so their strength was evenly matched. However, Kira was smarter and more experienced. After taking down the female agent, she discovered Cinder and his last subordinate escaping. The couple, Kira and Isaac, immediately started a boat and gave chase. On the sea, the two sides chased and fired relentlessly, but because the sea was choppy, no one could hit their target. The bullets only tore through the hulls of the boats. Then Kira closed the distance, using her own boat's hull to repeatedly ram Cinder's boat. His attention was drawn to Kira, causing him not to notice another boat approaching. Afterward, the couple stopped their boat on the shore. They knew well that Cinder wouldn't die so easily. They decided to split up to deal with him. Sure enough, just as they predicted, despite his body being covered in wounds, Cinder could still fight. Isaac charged in to fight the subordinate, and as soon as the fight began, Kira also confronted Cinder directly. He didn't expect her to arrive so quickly, immediately firing his last grenade at the ground. Seizing the opportunity, he rushed forward and threw a powerful punch. The battle between them erupted fiercely. Cinder's subordinate, after a while of being unable to defend himself, drew a knife to counterattack. Isaac immediately removed his hearing aid, because only when he couldn't hear was he the perfect warrior. After defeating the subordinate, Isaac took a gun and went to find Kira, but discovered she had been taken hostage by Cinder. With no other choice, he had to put his gun down. Kira glanced at her husband, then at her own shoulder, a subtle signal that Isaac understood immediately. In the end, Cinder had to pay with his life. The 5-year-long chase had finally come to an end. The danger was also completely eliminated. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment down below.